What's up, guys? I'm here with Mr. Silva. We're going to be talking about the last season of Game of Thrones and what we think about each episode. Let's get into it.
Episode 1, what did you guys think about the first episode? Silva, you go first.
The first episode, the most memorable part to me, besides Dany coming in and having all those dragons show up to Winterfell, was the ending. Because it ended with two characters, Bran and Jaime, which is how the first episode of the first season ended, with Jaime pushing Bran off. And I thought that was really cool how we almost kind of came full circle. And you wondered why Bran was just hanging outside all day. I mean, he's crippled and it's cold. And then all of a sudden Jaime shows up and it all makes sense. Like, he was waiting for him the whole time. I thought that was really neat.
Yeah. I feel like out of, all the episodes, that's probably, the best one just because, everything made sense how everything was laid out.
Right.
It was nice.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the highest rated episode of the season. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I thought it was an A, pretty much. You know, if it's a 92 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
I thought so, just because you had all these characters that you've been seeing live their lives in separate manners, but all interconnected somehow. Mm-hmm. And it's finally at a point where they're all brought together. And I really enjoyed that. And you still got a sense of what's going on in King's Landing. You know, Cersei's making her play. But you still got the whole worldview, and all those storylines are kind of coming together and connecting.
So the next episode is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Herman, what did you think about that one?
I feel like it's not as good as the first episode. It was still okay just because it was leading up to the battle with the Night King and all that.
I might be in the minority. I love the second episode. And I liked it because you knew a lot of these people, whether it was going to be in episode 3 or episode 5, were going to die. And it was a chance to see them tell their stories, see how long, how far they came. Jaime gets to knight Bran, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
And I think that people that were disappointed in that episode is mostly because they didn't get to fight. But if you knew anything about the series, if you paid attention to the research, the battle director who did the Battle of the Bastards, well, he was directing episode 3
and battle director
and episode 5, yeah, and that's what he was doing. So I always assumed that we weren't going to get a battle in the second episode because the battle director was doing 3 and 5. And so I didn't have an expectation that there was a fight, but some of my friends didn't really like it because they thought it was kind of boring. But I think if they went in with the expectation that they weren't going to get this start of the fight, then they would have been more open to it.
No, okay, well, that one actually has an 88%. That's the second highest rated episode. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. I mean, it looks like people did like it. Yeah. Now, the next episode, The Long Night, took a drop. And actually, at the time of that episode, apparently I think that was one of the second lowest rated episodes of the series, which is 75. Did you like the episode?
It was fine. I know they were going for some type of a visual thing, or it was really dark. Mm-hmm. And I was prepared for that because a friend of mine watched it before I did and just said, hey, turn your lights off, see what you can do so you can see a little better. And that helped out a little bit. But it was just so hard to kind of follow up with what was going on, not being able to see. That part was difficult. But overall, I thought it was okay. I thought the part with Arya, obviously killing the Night King, was amazing. I think it would have been cliche if Jon would have done it. But
I overall thought the battle was pretty cool, but I just feel like a lot of the decisions that were made, in terms of the defense and all that, it was kind of weird, just the Dothraki rush.
Right.
It was a cool moment.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't really make sense in doing that.
And you're protected. You have Winterfell, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to take over a castle. So why are you sending your forces out into nothing?
Yeah.
To fight? Wait till they come to you almost.
Yeah.
So that didn't make sense. But the Night King, did you like that Arya killed the Night King?
Personally, no. I feel like it shouldn't have been Arya. With Jon, I feel like it would have been too cliche.
Mm-hmm.
I personally feel should have been Theon. I feel like Theon would have been a good pick to
that would have been a real big redemption story.
At least because it's he took over Winterfell and then he came back. He wanted to redeem himself.
I know one of the criticisms is that a lot of people didn't die. You only had a few. Dolores Ed died, but everyone else they didn't. Did you like that? Did you not like that?
More characters should have died, but if it made sense.
Right.
I feel like some of the decisions that they made should have caused their death. Yeah,
they definitely got Brienne at one point. I think it was 14 people, that were on her, and she survived. My thing was same. If they were in a situation where presumably they should have died, they should have.
Yeah. But
I also don't really care if one of these characters we've watched for 8 seasons died.
Election.
So I don't mind if they didn't die, because if they would have died to the undead, it wouldn't really made an impact. Now, if they die to Cersei, Cersei or Euron kills them, I think that means more. But you're right. If they were put in this weird situation where they should have died, then they probably should have.
The Last of the Starks was the next episode, and it has a 58% on Rotten Tomatoes. Would you agree with that?
I hated episode 4.
Okay, Herman, did you hate it?
I kind of hated it too, yeah.
Okay, so you have 2 dragons that are flying, and they're going to Dragonstone, and all of a sudden, one of them gets killed, and you don't even see someone else coming. Like, you don't know Euron's there. There's no defense set up for that. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Not even not having the defense is that dragons are supposed to give you the advantage of being able to see more area and cover more area with that, but they just couldn't see the whole Iron Fleet.
Right.
It's kind of like...
And we're just going to, like, go there assuming that the other side doesn't know we're probably going to Dragonstone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just such a letdown. And not to mention, the 3 best shots of Euron's life just ends up taking out a dragon. Like, come on. The first time, Drogon gets nicked, and now this time it's, okay, we're advanced shooting.
Those students who receive...
So is that your final thoughts for The Last of the Starks?
Yeah, Last of the Starks, awful.
The next episode got worse reviews, and that's The Bells. That's 47.
So, again, like, I knew it was going to be the battle because the director's the battle guy. And also the director said he wished he could have directed 3, 4, and 5 because he felt like there was a beginning, a middle, and an end. And obviously, like in any story, right, the middle is where the bad guy takes control. And Cersei did that in that episode. And then the end is when the good guys prevail, presumably. My thing is we're obviously trying to head to this way where Dany's the Mad Queen, but it just felt rushed.
Yeah.
Everyone she killed before this moment where she goes crazy and destroys King's Landing was justified. And this one wasn't. What pushed her over the edge? And the only thing I got was because Jon doesn't want to be with her. I just don't think that's enough. I think you could have got there, but you had to spend way more time building that up. Jaime going back to Cersei. Yeah. Again, okay, so the arc of this character, self-centered, only cares about himself, to eventually wanting to protect his family, to eventually wanting to protect everyone, to protecting Brienne. All that's great. And then he goes and he fights for the living. He's with Brienne. Everything's good. And then he finds out that Cersei is trying to kill him. And his reaction is, oh, she might be in trouble. I need to go protect her. It just feels like, why did we just spend the last 6 seasons having his character develop like that? We get like a 12-minute montage of 2 flying dragons in this like Aladdin flying carpet with Jasmine deal in one of the earlier episodes when Jon and Dany are cruising around. And I can't get Jon to pet Ghost once. I pet my dog when I leave the living room and go into my bedroom. And Jon is going to leave Ghost presumably forever. And he just gives him like a wave? It doesn't make any sense to me. It made me so angry. I immediately hugged my dog for Ghost. Like, I did that for Ghost.
The final episode with a 55 is The Iron Throne, the end of the show. Herman, I called you last night and you said it was hot garbage.
My problem with this whole season is that, like, some of the events make sense, but it's just, like, too rushed. You can't, like... I just feel like characters just make decisions just, like, out of nowhere. And, Bran becoming king, like, technically it makes sense just because he could, like, see the past and the future and he could, like,
learn
see
from
everything.
his mistakes or everybody's mistakes,
Like, it makes sense, but, like, he hasn't even shown, like, his true, like true power or anything to, like, anybody. He's just been kind of sitting there saying random stuff.
Yeah.
It just doesn't show. I don't know.
I thought that if you assume that everything before this episode made sense, then the last episode makes sense. One of my biggest questions after number 5 was, why did we just protect Bran this whole time? Or even after episode 4. Why do we care? Or episode 3, why do we care that Bran's alive? And now we know, okay, well, he's going to be king. Okay, so all that makes sense. If you assume that Dany was mad, then this ending was fitting. Cersei dies because she gets crushed, and that kind of feels like she inflicted so much pain and damage to people that her getting crushed didn't really satisfy you. Dany being killed by Jon, that made sense, if you assume that she was mad. So the problem with this episode is you have to assume that everything that came before it was correct. If you can do that, then I think you can enjoy the last episode. What I did like about it was it tied up a lot of the loose ends. You know where Arya's going. You have an idea where Jon's going. You know, so you get the reunion with John and Ghost, which I'm a big fan of. Okay, so I was really happy with that. While still leaving some stuff to the imagination. So overall, from where it had been and having so many questions about the direction of Game of Thrones, I enjoyed the series and I enjoyed this last episode. I do hope that if George R. R. Martin ever does come out with the last books, that the storylines will make way more sense because he can put in more detail.
Yeah. I just feel like the whole season is just lacking like that extra detail put into it to make those characters' decisions make sense.
And which is what happens when you have a shortened season. And while, yes, they still had 8 hours, they could have used 2 extra hours. I mean, you could have used a point where Cersei in episode 2 or 3, when you never see her, has a conversation in King's Landing with Euron. Hey, how are we going to fight 2 dragons? And he says, well, we know they're going to Dragonstone. That's where Dany's from. I'm going to go stake out Dragonstone. That makes total sense. And now preps you for, hey, they're going to show up and take out one of the dragons. But I feel like the directors wanted more shock and awe than they wanted a realistic storyline. And so they went for the big, oh my gosh moments instead of having everything make sense beforehand. And I think because of that, it kind of lost some of its luster.
Did you like the ending? Did you kind of, I guess, yeah, so just quickly, did you like the ending?
I'm satisfied.
You're satisfied?
Yeah, just the rest of the season doesn't satisfy me. Like, the ending made sense, but just...
The rest of it could have led up
before
better.
that, yeah.
Would you recommend the show, I guess?
I'd recommend the show.
I'd recommend the show as well, just knowing...
Would you recommend season 8, though, I guess, to, like...
If you're going to put in 7 seasons, you got to watch the last season.
Yeah.
I tried rewatching this whole series before the last season came out, and I had to skip until like season 5 because there's so many sad things that happen, and I think that's one of the biggest criticisms is people would say, well, you didn't like the ending or the last season because the characters, they didn't get the happy ending. If you watch Game of Thrones, you never expect the happy ending. I mean, ever since Ned Stark ever since Bran got pushed out of the tower, you don't expect the happy ending. But everything that happened made sense. It made sense that Jaime pushed Bran out. It made sense that Ned died. Like, all those things had to happen for the story to make sense. And I think that's what we talked about. The last season, a bunch of the big moments, they just didn't make sense, given the information that we had.
Yeah.
Was there care put into the last season?
I think that D&D, the showrunners, were over it. They have a 3-movie deal with Disney, and they're going to do 3 Star Wars movies, a new trilogy. And I think they were just so done that they wanted to wrap it up. They were offered 10 episodes by HBO, and they declined. And yes, the last several were an hour and 20 minutes or so. But still, again, 2 hours would have been so much more helpful in the progression of the story. And I just feel like maybe I take it more personally because I've invested a bunch of time in books into this as well. And I just, I'm upset about it. But at the end of the day, I don't actually blame them the most. I blame George R. R. Martin the most. I mean, his last book came out 8 years ago. And in the meantime, he's written different volumes about different...
Was it 18 or was it 8?
It was 8 years ago.
Okay.
But he's written other things. He has an encyclopedia coming out about the Targaryens, a 2-volume, 300 pages each, all about the Targaryen history. And it's like, I don't think that D&D signed up to write an ending to Game of Thrones. I think they assumed that over the last several years that he would release some books. And then he didn't. And then they were kind of stuck, and so they have the main pillars. Dany goes mad, Jon almost dies but goes to the north. Arya is a crazy cool assassin. Sansa becomes tough and whatnot. That they just said, okay, well, we're going to get to those points. We don't really care how we get there. That's what we're going to do. So the only hope that I have is that all of this is corrected with the new books coming out, if they ever come out.
Well, I'd like to thank Mr. Silva for coming here to talk about last season of Game of Thrones with us. So. We invested so much time in here. It was the right thing to do. So much emotion.
Boom. Say subscribe, Silva. Say subscribe.
Smash that like button and subscribe. If John would have done it, but... Do you want to check real quick?